when I was in school, you had bullies, and we faced bullies, and I'll talk a little bit more about that on next week's show about my experience with bullies. But can you recall like the first age that you were at when you found bullying or saw bullying around your school?
Absolutely. I can talk from a personal experience, but I was roughly 7 years old when I first experienced being bullied.
Yeah. So what was that like for you at that age? And did you have someone that you could reach out to at the age of 7?
Yes. So going back to the age of 7, I realized that bullying took place around that time because basically, and just to let the world know, that I am a triplet. So,
that's a pretty neat fact. You should have told me that earlier. You're a triplet. Wow. So there are 2 more of you.
Yes, it is.
Wonderful, wonderful. Sorry to cut you off.
Oh, no problem about that. I'm the only gifted one.
I'm going to tell your brothers that when I meet them.
But yes, times back then was kind of hard. Just imagine trying to take care of one small kid, and it was 5 of us, but of the 5, 3 of us was triplets, and just growing up at that age, during that time, we was living the best that we can. My parents, trying to do what they can just to get us through, and we didn't have the best clothes, the best shoes, and I just remember getting picked at during that age. And so we always had our parents that can, protect us. But sometimes, as a kid, when you face that, your parents are like the last person that you want to let know.
Right. And that's a sad case when we have situations like that. But you're right. As adults, we can see in hindsight that we should have reached out to our parents. But when you're experiencing that at such a young age, the last thing you want to do when you have other things going on in the household is to tell your parents that you're being bullied.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So did you have any teachers or anyone at the school that kind of talked about it? Because I think when I was in school, they didn't have the anti-bullying campaigns. I know bullying has gotten so serious now with students, taking their lives, for being bullied through years of abuse, enduring years of abuse with bullies. And they have the anti-bullying campaign in most schools. So that's why I think it's so great that you came up with this character, Nelish, in this anti-bullying campaign to give a face to it. So it almost destigmatizes it, for someone at that young age. So I think that's great that you came up with a character that a 9th grader could at least associate with and be able to identify, hey, this is going on with me, and I found a way that I can talk about that.
Yes, so back during that time, I think the only thing that was out was different commercials, and I think the DARE program was relevant during that time.
Mm-hmm.
But that time when I was being bullied, I think I was kind of, 7, the ages of 7 to 8, wasn't sure if DARE was really a factor at that time, but I figured when I went through it, I figured it was just, a little transitional phase, maybe every so often that would happen. And, I just thought that during that time, that's just a stigma or just a stereotype, you go through it,
Mm-hmm.
It's, a part of life.
Yeah, and I know you referenced like being bullied for not having the same things that some of the other kids had, but I know in some of your promotional material, you also got bullied because you were smart.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, so that was part of that. Sometimes, people use intimidation to try to make you be out of the norm. And so, yes, being smart was a part of that, being bullied. So I can remember that to this day. And so I was fortunate one time I was able to actually handle that situation. And I remember the principal finding out because I kind of retaliated after it happened. After a while, I sort of retaliated.
Mm-hmm.
The principal found out and told my mom. And on the flip side, I told my mom, I said, hey, something happened. You told us to defend ourselves.
Yeah.
Yes, she said, okay, Kevin, I'm not going to, spank you for that because you did what I told you. So
right.
that was
your way of speaking out.
Yes. I was fortunate then, but, it's some people out there that's not fortunate. The parents are the last to know, and things can happen much worse.
Right. Because absolutely, and I know according to the National Center for Educational Statistics, they're saying that it's maybe 21% of students in the 6th through the 12th grade who actually even report that they have been bullied. Can you imagine that? Only 21%. But that is down from 32% in like 2007. But they haven't, that's very interesting. But they have seen an increase in adults who've reported that they were bullied that never reported it before. So what do you think about those statistics?
Yes, I'm not surprised because actually when I do go to the different schools and things like that, I normally put statistics out there. And you'll be surprised. It's kind of like out of the norm that things like that happen because it's kind of like I look at it like a Me Too movement.
Yeah.
Yes, a lot of things happen where people feel comfortable talking about it a little bit later because they figure now is probably the best time they can talk about it.
Right, and they've developed a little bit because bullying. For students, they experience sometimes long-range emotional and physical and behavioral problems because you never know how long that abuse has gone on, and you don't know if they're experiencing any other abuse in their life as well. And it could definitely affect their sense of self-worth, and it could affect their academics. Well, it didn't affect you because you were the gifted one. But but some of those out there could affect their academics. And they end up feeling angry and lashing out. And we know that a lot of schools have like no tolerance policies as it relates to, fighting and things like that. So like you said earlier, you were fortunate that you didn't get into a lot of trouble once you decided to defend yourself. But I know a lot of schools have anti-bullying legislation in place in their schools and in their school policies, but not everyone, handles those situations the same. So we definitely need to take notice of how bullying affects our children in the school system. And by no means are we providing any legal advice or counseling advice for our listeners out there. But we are trying to serve Mr. Grant, Kevin, and I, and the New Heights Educational Group. We're trying to hear from our listeners, about what they think about the bullying and anti-bullying, and if we think that the things that we're doing is being effective. And all we can do is to give our children a voice so that they feel comfortable in the fact and knowing that they too can provide a pathway to other students to be able to speak out about bullying, whether it's on and I rode the school bus. I don't know about you, Kevin. Sometimes, bullying can take place on the playground.
Oh, yes.
On the school bus or in the classroom, sometimes in the lunchroom, right?
Yes, yes.
Right.
I can definitely expound on that. On the bus. Yes, going back to being smart, yes, I went through some episodes where it was kind of like, if you do my homework, you can avoid this. Right. So that's one prime example, and I think that's what made me want to create an iconic hero, because drawing was my escape back then.
Yeah.
And that was my safe haven, so I felt at peace, and I figured that, you know what, maybe something good can come out of this one day.
Right. Well, that energy definitely landed in a great place, because you have some great products. And I hope that, again, our listeners check out your products. And I want you to tell us again, Kevin, about how our listeners can get in contact with you and your website information. And because we know that you're a children's author, an artist, and an entertainer, and a former service member, I want to add. And thank you for your service to our country, Mr. Grant. We greatly appreciate that, because you served in the military for 12 years. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. That's absolutely correct.
And we thank you for that, because that is definitely a selfless act. So can you tell our listeners again about your website and your contact information, so that they can seek out these products if they're in an educational setting, or if they're in an after-school program, how they can reach out to you and maybe get more information, or maybe even have you come to their school or their organization and speak with their students about anti-bullying, and bring Nelish along with you?
Yes. So if you want to, as soon as possible, you can always go out to my website, and that's nelishquest.com, NELISHQUEST.com. And from there, you will find all of my contact information, how I can be reached. Also, accessories are available, books and other merchandising products. And like Ms. Williams said, we would love to come out to this community and perform live events. So my contact information can be found on the website, www.nelishquest.com. You can also follow me on Instagram, and that's Kevin Grant 777. Again, that's Kevin Grant 777. And if you want to, you can reach me directly, and we can go from there. And you can reach me at area code 904-874-5811.
Give them that number again, Mr. Grant.
Yes, that's area code 904-874-5811.
And that is Nelish. Never, ever let invaders show harm. Well, we have truly enjoyed your interview tonight, Mr. Grant, and we want to thank you again for joining us on the New Heights Educational Group. I want to remind our listeners that my co-host Erica Henson airs on Thursdays at 2 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, 1 o'clock p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and 4 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we hope that you enjoyed our presentation today. And on next week, we will be discussing experiences that I have had and stories that I've heard of bullying and anti-bullying campaigns. So we will continue our talk on bullying, and we hope that you join us on next week. We hope that you join us next week. That's our time, and you have been listening to the New Heights Show on Education. I'm your host, Buffie Williams. If you like what you've heard, search for us on your smart speaker and listen to us anytime. Thank you for listening. Good night. Until we meet again next Tuesday night, 6 p.m. Central Standard Time, 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time, as we discuss next week's topic. Enjoy expanded content from the New Heights Education Group hosts on Blog Talk, iTunes, SoundCloud, Spreaker, and Watch No Learn.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the New Heights Show on Education. This show was written and expressed by Buffie Williams. Audio and mixing was produced by Jamal Banks. Thank you for listening. Good night. Until we meet again on the New Heights Show on Education.